Have you ever had a moment where everything just stopped making sense? You prayed, you did what was right, you tried to follow God, and still life turned upside down. The job fell through, the person you trusted walked away, the dream you thought was from God started falling apart. And you whispered, Lord, what are you doing? If that's where you are right now, stay with me till the end. Because before this message ends, you will understand that even when life doesn't make sense, God's hands is still holding your story. Let me tell you a story. There was a young woman named Rachel. She loved God deeply. She prayed every morning, read her Bible, and always believed God had a plan for her life. After years of struggling, she finally got the job she had dreamed of. It felt like everything was falling into place. But just 6 months later, it all came crashing down. The company shut down unexpectedly. She was left jobless, bills piling up, and her faith hanging by a thread. She prayed, God, why would you bless me with something and take it away? But heaven was silent. Days turned into weeks, and the silence started to feel like betrayal. Have you ever been there where you are doing everything right, but life still feels wrong? Rachel's story is our story because trusting God when things are good is easy, but trusting Him when everything falls apart, that's where real faith begins. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, it says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. But notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, understand everything first. It says, trust. And that is the hardest part because trust often means walking with God without knowing the destination. Russell didn't see it at the time, but God was closing one door to open another. 3 months later, she got a phone call from a friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Someone who recommended her for a position she never applied for. It paid more, aligned with her calling, and gave her the platform to share her faith in ways she never imagined. Looking back, she said something that still gives me chills. If God had explained everything back then, I would have still argued. But now, I see his silence was his protection. Friend, maybe God isn't asking you to understand right now. Maybe he's just asking you to trust. Sometimes we want clarity, but God gives us faith instead. We want answers, but He offers peace that passes understanding. Because clarity can make you confident in yourself, but faith makes you confident in Him. And think about Joseph in the Bible, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison, and yet He kept trusting God. Nothing made sense for years, but when God's plan finally unfolded, Joseph realized that every detour was divine direction. He said to his brother in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Sometimes what looks like chaos is actually construction. God is building something, even in the ruins of your confusion. So, if life feels uncertain, if your prayers feel unanswered, if your future feels blurry, don't quit, don't walk away. Because the same God who guided Joseph from a prison to a palace is guiding you through this too. You may not see it, but one day you will look back and say, that's why it didn't work out. That's why God said no. That's why it had to happen this way. God doesn't waste confusion, He uses it to shape your faith.